Hello, good afternoon. You guys, you're getting cabin fever already, huh? Well, had a lot of that this season. Hope you guys are staying warm. I'm Wave Meteorologist Brian Good. Welcome to a delayed version here of SnowTALK today. Trying to get our schedules all rearranged here today, but want to make sure to obviously address the status on the snow set up for tonight. And we're going to cover some of the river gauges, and we're going to get you into the know on how things are trending for the long term. If you want to know, I don't know if you want to know or not, but we're going to cover all that and more. As always, your questions and comments, even if they can be brutal at times, I'll handle it. But you can do so on the social media side. For those of you watching on streaming, you will have to open up Facebook or X or even YouTube, for that matter, to be able to see some of the comments if you want to chime in. But so far, it seems like several of you, maybe because it's the blog, several of you are really wanting more snow. I love snow. You guys know that. Obviously, you guys know that. But I like the wet snow scenarios where you like Sunday, where it sticks to everything and then it's gone. You can make a snowman. You can get around. You can travel. If you want to go and get some nuggets and fries, you can go and do that. But in this scenario, when it starts to ice things up, roads become a mess. It just becomes a lot more of a stress. But, hey, that's the way it goes. You can't, have everything you always want on that kind of setup. But that's how I am a true snow lover, as is in that sense. Not all this frozen stuff that sticks around for days and days. Because you're right, cabin fever does indeed start to set in, especially this year. But I think, too, we need to talk about flooding, because that is still going to be an issue for a while, unfortunately. So if you live in a flood-prone area, I'll have those stats for you guys coming up in just a second. All right, let's get right into the actual snowboard. Where do we stand here? Well, we got the light snow moving in for tonight. Light being key on that. We'll go through it, amounts and timing coming up in just a second. Next Thursday and Friday, a bit of a different setup, because we are going to warm up. I'm sure you guys have heard we're going to be thawing out, getting close to 60 perhaps in a few cases next week. So we are going to warm up nicely. But we're going to have another system that will try to dig in more colder air. So now we're back into that snow to rain mix. In some cases, it may be rain into snow or reverse, depending on when it does arrive, day or night, and that we'll cover as well. I didn't add anything else beyond that on the snowboard. But if I'm being brutally honest, there are signs of more items to be added. I'll at least give you some hints to that coming up here in just a second. All right, stats for the snow. Well, this is just for Louisville. Since Sunday, we had that wet snow event. We had the snow. It was coming to an end about this time yesterday. Then the snow last night and this morning. So with the 3 waves that we've had, if you count Sunday, it's altogether 5.4. Some of you have that amount still on the ground. Some of you have seen it compact just a bit or even blow around, which is what happened with the snow last night. A lot of that blew around. It's hard to find. That brings our season total, though, as of right now, 22.3. And we're going to add a little bit more to that for tonight. Pretty wild stuff. Normally 13.4. Yeah, we're beating that in a big way. I am keeping an eye on our snowboard out in the weather garden. Thanks to Kevin, our engineering team, to finally making this happen. I've been wanting this for years, and he did it in like 5 minutes. It blew around. You could see right in front of the board where it blew off in front of the measurement there, but it got up there about a little over an inch, and then the wind hit it. Boom, there we go. So I'll have to keep working on that. You see flakes are flying out there now. Some flurries are indeed falling out of some of these clouds. Very pretty view. I just need to get some like LED lights on it, spotlights. Nothing's going to melt the snow, but something a little more festive. I'll work on that. That'll be my project, probably this summer. Is that fair? Okay. Let's get into where we stand on the snow just from last night, though, which no doubts that was not exactly the numbers we were looking at. I hate to ever say a storm underperformed because storms don't choose to overachieve or underperform. They just do what they do. It's up to us to figure out what they're going to do, right? And the losing of its moisture as it transferred to the low and the East Coast, that was the thorn in this whole system. And it got us. All right. So that's where the amounts, you can even tell right there on 65, where the drop started to take place as the low was already in the transfer status. And you'll see where it is now here in just a second. Several 1 to 2s in the area. It was even at my house. It was very difficult to measure just because it did blow around so much. It's such a powdery snow. But ratios, yesterday's snow was about 22 to 1. The snow really last night and this morning was more about 12 to 16. So that also was a little off. Temperatures didn't match that exactly. So that makes a difference. I mean, that seemed like it, although I think we've kind of been hitting that hard about what ratios mean, but that small amount of a change can have great outcomes, obviously. E-Town down into Hardin County, roughly about 4 inches on the ground there. Boy, those side roads, I don't know what your roads look like in your neighborhood. Mine are snow covered, although it's much easier this time around than what we had in January, right? Because not only is it not as deep, but we at least got traction. That's good. We don't have that layer of freezing rain, the sleet. That's what made it really hard in January. In this case, our wheels can grip. Just be careful in many ways. First off, in stopping and accelerating, that's where the slides usually happen. Changing lanes on the interstates to get to a ramp. You can catch a little snow patch in the triangle of the split as you merge or accelerate onto the ramps themselves on the interstate. But also as the treatment is ongoing for a lot of the roadways and salt gets applied, we're at the temperature now, salt's working fine. It'll work. And we're getting a few sun rays at times. They're hitting the salt. That helps in activating it as well. So that turns it into slush. So instead of getting a more compact snow on your neighborhood streets, you're going to get into the slush. It's probably a few inches deep. That can also be slick until they have a chance to come by with the plow and get that off the road. So even treated roads can be slick depending on if they've been plowed or not. So just use some caution in general and make sure you got plenty of that wiper fluid in your car. I know I've got to be running low. I'm pressing it too far, I think. I know I'm going to get the alert pretty soon. But you're going to need that for a while, especially as we are slow to ease out of this cold pattern here and get into a thawing. But we'll have many more chances, I'm sure, to get salt in our windshield. So if you haven't had a chance yet, certainly stock up on it. All right, let's get you, there's the outside view. We're going to talk about flooding coming up in just a second. Here's a view from these are live images, by the way, from our Kentucky mesonoid cameras. That's down into Bullitt County. Pretty scene there, the snow on the ground over at the Capitol. There's your snow there. Adair County. Hey, everybody this time has got snow on the ground, so we don't get that very often, although we've had it a few times this season, seems like. Marion County, 21 degrees there with that snow on the ground. Very pretty scenes. If you're able to enjoy it without having to deal with the side roads issue, you're fine. Main roads, by the way, are really good. It's the side roads that are a bit of a pain. Okay, the thermometer. Well, that is going to be a concern not only in actual temperature the next couple of nights, but the wind is going to be kicking up a bit more. It already was last night. We'll see a bit more of an uptick as we head into later tonight, early tomorrow. So the wind chill factor will be a little more of a factor. I'll show you those numbers in a second. Right now we're 24. A lot of teens out there, 19 in Shelbyville, 17, now 18 as you head into Seymour, Indiana. Currently feels like 15 in Louisville. Still got some single-digit wind chills. Not every spot can register a wind chill. Keep that in mind. But the ones that are picking up the wind, pretty obvious that they're recording it. Marion County 9, Lexington at 6, R15 is our wind chill indeed in Louisville. Okay, so the view from space, pretty wild because it's a mix of seeing the snow on the ground from space and a mix of some cloud cover and new clouds that are developing over the snowpack, allowing for the flurries, as you saw there on the weather board camera in the garden, that are flying out there. Hard to see all of that. It's all minor, but you just got to look at the finer details. But I love visible satellites. Tom Wills was a big fan of that, and I remember that as a kid, and I still to this day, it's one of my favorite weather tools is the visible satellite because it tells you so much what's happening. But we got the main clouds from the winter storm that's moving now into the mid-Atlantic area, the back edge there. It's hard to see the striations in the clouds across areas around Louisville and southern Indiana. Let me zoom in a little more so you can see those. And individual clouds like that, air's cold enough that it's just trying to squeeze out what it can. And that's why we got those flurries that are flying there, as you saw on the camera. Minor stuff, just a few flakes. Not a big ordeal, but pretty widespread snowpack, though, over much of the Ohio Valley, Midwest, and even the Tennessee Valley. Okay, so the storm has done its thing, moved across, did the transfer as it moved across the deep south here in the Gulf Coast area, and now it is redeveloping into the mid-Atlantic, feeding off the moisture coming in from the ocean itself. So classic setup to see that, although sometimes these things can be big nor'easters. And some of the modeling earlier this week was trying to hint that the big cities may see that. But this one's actually going to have more east than it will north. So it's going to avoid this area, which, you know, we've actually had more snow in many cases than they've had in the Northeast, which is not a common thing. But this one is going to be impacting more of the Carolinas and Virginia, it looks like, in the Delmarva Peninsula there. But that transfer happened, now heading east. So what's next? Well, another piece of energy is diving into the Midwest. But the one that we had last night already had limited moisture as it is. This one's going to have limited moisture with it, but this one also has a little bit more of a kick to it or a lift to it. So now we're balancing out. How will that play out? Limited moisture, but a better kick to it. Typically means snow showers will not be a general widespread light snow that got moderate times last night. It just snowed, it seemed like all night last night. It was just a constant light snow flying around. It's hard to even see it with the wind. If you're looking at your snow light out your window there, it's probably going sideways at times. These will be a little more blotchy. So at times you'll have nothing, then you'll go into flurries, and then you'll get a decent snow shower that will cause the majority of your accumulation you're going to see. And then it ends, and you may get another one, maybe an hour later. It'll be more like that as this low moves into the area. If you look carefully, you can see a little bit of that spin right there into Iowa. Again, not so much on the radar yet, but as it gets closer to us this evening, it's a fast mover. It's technically the look and feel of a clipper, but not exactly as far as its origination as one. But the alerts are out in advance of it, mainly for the Ohio River Valley, our area, because we're at the cross point where criteria is more strict for Indiana and Ohio on these type of light snow events. But there's not going to be as much snow falling south of where the advisory is. So we're just right there in that, I don't know, Goldilocks zone, if you will, where we will have enough to trigger an alert to be issued for it, but not a big amount of snow either. So it looks like we're going to get the highest amount of this clipper as it moves by. That's not necessarily true. It's just where we're at, our impacts typically are a little more felt. So that's why the Weather Service has the winter weather advisory. I hope that's not too confusing, but there is a reasoning behind sometimes all the madness of the colors that we show all these alerts. The winter storm warnings are out. That getting on our snow, they're stealing it all. Okay, anyway, let's get into the advisory. It includes just about everybody watching right now, especially for our Kentucky counties. Carroll's the only one right now because you are the only one controlled by Wilmington, Ohio. So we'll see if they decide to issue one for you or not. And Indianapolis controls the northern tier. I know their criteria is certainly more strict than when it is down into our region here in the Wave Country. So we don't know yet if they will issue one or not. It's kind of doubtful right now, but sometimes they could do that even for amounts. It could be under an inch if the impact is there. So we'll monitor that as with this evening. I think at this point, you know it's going to snow, right? You know it's coming in. So these alerts are not as attention getting as they would be if we had a quiet weather pattern for weeks on end. But when you have so many of these in a row, it's like okay, it's a constant alert for something coming our way. All right, so let's get through it. Here we go, Futurecast, hour by hour. We're fine this afternoon other than the flurries. Don't panic. Just be careful, get on side roads. We get into about 8 or 9 o'clock. That wave that's in Iowa will then start to quickly develop a snow band ahead of that spin across central Indiana first. So as we get to about 8 or 9 o'clock, you should be able to see on the Wave Weather app snow beginning to break out. Ratios on this one, I think, will be similar. It looked like we're going to be colder tonight. That would boost the numbers up on ratio. Not sold on that yet. I think on the backside, perhaps the last hour or two of this clipper, if you will, that moves on by, the ratios could go up to a 20 to 21 to 1 ratio. Not to get all technical on it. Don't have a whole lot of time to explain all that, but you've been paying attention to our live feeds. You know what I mean by that. It may be a little closer to what we had this morning. So I think the amounts will be similar as a result. Timing is similar too. Around the 11 o'clock news, midnight, we should have snow flying, whether it's light or in some cases a decent snow shower passing through your area. The radar should just be lit up in general as we get to the 11 o'clock news tonight and midnight. That will continue into the wee hours of your Thursday. But on the backside of the system, we'll start to see everything thin out, become a little more on the flurry action. There's one or two. I see this happen a lot. 1 or 2 snow showers that just want to fight the last second and just pop on the radar and put down like a quick quarter, half an inch, and everywhere else is a flurry. And they pop on the radar and they're gone with like 10 minutes. I would say it's funny, but for snow lovers, it's not very funny. But 1 or 2 of those could do that in our eastern counties. It wouldn't surprise me. And that would get you more than likely, as you see on amounts, I think 1 inch is a benchmark we're going to be talking about here. If we're going to see any amount that will be over that, it will be from those that sneak in at the last minute and take advantage of that higher ratio to tail into the system. Otherwise, they'll clear out of here. Flurries do linger with this for a while. Models seem to be too fast on end in snow, but flurries will like linger, but impactful snow will be done at that point. But road crews will have another challenge for them because the thermometer will keep dropping. There'll be wind. So some of the snow will be blowing back on the roads again. So they'll have to constantly apply the salt. Some plowing probably will have to be done when that slush builds up after the treatment. And your side roads, if they're bad now and they're not getting treated today, they're going to be bad again tomorrow. We'll see what happens with schools. I'm not going to make that call, of course. I don't make that call, but I think you know where I'm going there. As we head into tomorrow afternoon, better chance to get some sunshine. Boy, tomorrow's going to be the coldest day of this whole period will be tomorrow as far as daytime highs. We'll be lucky if we can get to 20. Louisville likely has a good chance to do that because we tend to show off here with our urban heat island. But outlying areas, most of you watching will likely stay in the teens tomorrow for highs. And wind chills may stay in the upper single digits all day. Yikes. All right. As far as the modeling, well, we'll see what it says here. This is the NAM model. Generally, we see the gray. It's barely a colding. You get into the blue. Now you're starting to talk about maybe a 1 inch mark being reached. Very blotchy, right? I love how it leaves out Louisville right in the center of it. Sometimes it isn't wrong. Our in-house model, overall, it's got a couple of the darker blues. I think that's overdone. I think it's because it doesn't interpret very well on ratios, this in-house model does, but you get the idea that it's just going to be, I mean, it's so hard to draw a snow map, guys, in this kind of a look. You get into the HER model, same deal. A few that enhance, especially the last minute ones, can be the ones that can push you over about a few tenths of an inch or even a half inch of snow. You get into the GFS, it likes, for some reason, either side of 65. And then the Euro, which it's hard to trust the Euro this close in time frame because the grid is not great on the Euro, but yeah, it's fair. It says at least everyone has a chance of something. These are going to be harder to pick out because we already have snow on the ground. So it's going to be hard for you to notice new snow unless you're paying attention or have a snowboard that you clear off today to measure the snow tomorrow. Don't measure in the yard, and even your deck, unless you've cleared it off. Don't send us a picture of the ruler on measuring the snow on your deck. That's the snow from Sunday until now. That doesn't help us any. We need new snow amounts. Okay, so clear all that off, get rid of it, and then remeasure again by early tomorrow. But the wind's going to be a little gustier, so this is going to be, you're going to be chasing the flakes in the yard. So don't try to scoop them back up either. That's cheating. So you get the idea. A light snow overall. Our forecast, I would say up to an inch is fair, and I hate to be that vague on it, but we kind of have to in this scenario. This has got a limit to it. This is not a 4 to 5 inch snow event. Some of you may only get flurries, so there is a very low bar on that end. But I think a lot of you will get something out of it, but you just won't really notice it a whole lot unless it's on top of the car, if you've cleared it off, or your snowboard. It'll only be a minor change you would likely see. It won't be overly significant, but it will freshen it up, as I like to say. Freshen the snowpack is always kind of pleasant, right? When does it start again? 8 to 9 o'clock, we should see the radar light up. And then we get into the overnight hours, especially at the 11 o'clock midnight window. That's when we should see the greatest coverage. But you could still get some of those snow showers all the way to 4 or 5 a.m. Don't get me wrong. It's just the coverage of those will start to go down. And we'll see what happens on impacts tomorrow morning. Make sure to stay tuned. All of our newscasts tonight and early tomorrow for that update as well. Now, once the skies begin to clear, that's when the thermometer drop. I don't think it's going to clear rapidly with this system. So actual temperatures tonight, I'm not overly concerned on them being a huge drop for the area, but the wind will be stronger. So that's why the cold weather advisory, and it's technically extreme cold weather advisory, it just matches the heat advisory wording that we have in the summertime. But you get the idea. I know sometimes you're like, it's already cold. But this is where we get to wind chills that get down to below zero when we get to these kind of alerts. And in fact, the latest numbers are showing that, especially west of 65, it doesn't show it along 65 because, and I agree, we're going to have still the flurries and the clouds at this point, right? So a better chance to see some of that clearing, and the snowpack is also a little deeper west of us. That would allow for a little more of a lower drop in temperature, and therefore your wind chill will be lower. So, but there is certainly an opportunity for a lot of you to get below zero tomorrow morning. So make sure you're prepared for that. Once we get into Friday morning, I think we'll be colder Friday morning, but the wind won't be as strong. So we probably won't get an alert on Friday morning, but still it will be a frigid day on Friday. Then we reverse and begin to change up the storyline. A lot to cover there. We're going to do that. I'm going to get to some of your questions. And also we're going to cover the very latest on the river stages. Boy, we got to talk about that. We're going to do that and more coming up in just 30 seconds. Stay with us, guys. Alrighty, appreciate your patience. Let's get right to it. All right, some of your questions or comments. We'll see what how this is going to go here. All right, let's see. Which Kenneth says, which model performed the best this winter? Well, that's a good question. They all have their perks, if you will, different ways they handle scenarios, whether it's a warming scenario or Arctic cold. They all kind of vary. The NAM doesn't do too bad, but the NAM tends to overdo moisture, so that's usually why it gets a lot of attention. And there's two versions of the NAM that get, I see on social media a lot, a very poor kilometer one, which tends to be a little more dramatic, and then the very close in 3 kilometer one, which does fairly well. But again, they do have a lot of moisture involved in them. But that's really the one that I think has been looked at the most. The herd doesn't do too bad. They all have, again, all different quirks to them all. We just have to take a blend of them all and kind of just figure out who's telling the truth and who's lying. And sometimes you can get burned on that, and sometimes it can do quite well. But I promise you that it's examined thoroughly to the point where our brains hurt. All right. Let's see. Hi, Brandon. Hope you're doing well. Are there any thoughts about maybe ice jams happening with this cold, like the previous floods? Good question on that. And no, I don't think that the cold is going to be as extensive for that long a period. We were in the single digits for several times especially in a 2-week window. So that just really, if you remember, the ice really didn't start forming until that second week. It took a bit of time. So this is going to be a short duration to where that will not be an issue. But it's a good point. Areas where the flooding is right on the edge of it, especially when it's away from the main flow that's happening with the rivers, that's where ice will form. And in many cases, it's on the banks of land and dirt where it's not a huge issue. But if it's on a roadway, be careful. I know at least in Louisville, they are constantly salting to try to combat that and keep that stress down a bit more, which is always good. Is that a 4-color pen? I don't know. I'll just grab whatever's here. It's my a nervous tick that I have. I do it all the time. Nope, it's a red marker. You're right. It's just a red marker. All right. So I think everybody keeps asking about what's next. Well, I'll tell you what. Before we get to that, let's get into the rivers real quick. I do want to cover those stages. The Rolling Fork on its way down. Thank goodness. 43.75. That was about 2 or 3 hours ago. Should be falling back within its banks as we head into tomorrow morning. So good news there. It's one of those rivers that doesn't really stay high very often for a very long period of time, I should say. So it's on its way down. So some good news there. And when it comes to the Ohio River, especially McAlpin Upper, the lower gauge is only going to climb a couple more inches, roughly about, I'll show you that in a second, actually, about 57, 58. The Ohio River upper gauge, 27.29, but look how long it takes to really at the end of the weekend to start to see a drop and to get back within its banks at that point. So the Ohio is always the case with large rivers, slow to rise, slow to fall. There's the lower 58.6, gets to 59.8, and then looks like it'll begin its drop slowly but surely over the weekend. The good news is, as you're about to see, the weather pattern does not have a lot of storm systems loaded in it to cause this to change in a significant way at all. And I don't see a lot of even upstream heavy rain events or heavy snow events in the upper portion of the Ohio Valley, which can also affect the Ohio. So that's good. So we're getting a nice little dry stretch will be coming our way. I don't think it's going to last very long, so we may find ourselves back in this category again in about a week or so, but at least for now, we're going to get some improvement. So let's get right to it. What does it look like as we evolve down the road and heading into next week? We are going to thaw out this weekend. I think we could even hit the freezing mark on Saturday. Now, there was a hint of getting some very light rain or snow in the return flow here, but it just doesn't look like it's going to be a strong enough moisture field to really get too excited about it. So we're going to keep the chance 10 to 20%. Looks minor. We could still get below freezing at night, but I think during the day we should get above freezing, and certainly on Sunday. Next week, 40s, rapidly into 50s, may get awful close to 60 for a couple of days here. It's nice. But just like we've seen several times this winter, the trough wants to once again dive in the eastern part of the country and dig. As that happens, here comes another low pressure that will eventually move in, likely as a rain type of setup. Timing on that looks to be roughly, I would say, Thursday or Friday next week. And then as it digs, we have to watch the northern portion of this, the deformation zone, which is the zone where the cold air above gets pushed down, and that could change it into a thumping of snow in some cases. The Euro, not overly excited about it yet, but it's been alluding to it at times. GFS certainly has been alluding to it way early on this one. We're getting into the time of the year now where these are going to become much more of a pain to gather, because now we're not just dealing with all snow, now we're really dealing with that changeover issue and dynamic cooling. Oh boy. This is likely, here we are. We're closing out the last few days of February, and cold air sinks back into the Ohio Valley. In fact, looking at the overall pattern ahead into early March, okay, it's the same issue. The Hudson Bay Low, everything the way it's configured, even over into Japan, they're getting snow, and still got that ridging going on into Western Canada, into the Gulf of Alaska. This just doesn't seem to want to give up. I am not seeing a big signal that wants to shake this. Now, one thing in our favor is the sun angle. That's getting higher every day. So naturally, we're going to push the polar vortex away to where it'll retreat back to the North Pole where it belongs. That will naturally happen. But around here, it can take some times to get out of this. I've seen cold shots of air all the way into early May. So it can take some time. I don't think it's going to go all the way to May, at least not yet. But I think we need to be aware that, yes, more wintry weather could still take place in March. And with active storm track, the way these lows are configured, these lows just dropping in, they scoop up the moisture right at that point where some of them are in a warm pattern at that point. They're all rain or even thunderstorms. And then the wind in behind it is in a colder pattern, and it's mainly a winter storm. We've seen this back and forth that has been going on now since the turn of the year. And right now, the outlook for March says more of the same will be coming our way. We'll see. We'll take it one system at a time, but not shocking to see snow potential in March. It happens a lot. Some of our bigger ones have happened in March, but we'll get into much more of your wetter snow scenarios, the ones that don't stick around as long. But I am more concerned about the river setup now. Now they got the rivers up high. We need more gaps in these systems, right? We need some breaks in here so that we can get these rivers back within their banks. And that may be a bit more of a tough challenge based on the way this weather pattern is looking. All right, there we go with 24 this afternoon. There's at 12 tonight again, even colder as we head into Thursday night, could drop into single digits. And then we do thaw out as we head into the weekend. And there we go. A few days anyway, into the 50s. Oh boy, everyone driving around the convertibles and your Mustangs. I'm sure have the tops off, right? Nice little thawing trend. And then, yeah, we'll just see what happens as we head into next Thursday. All right, guys, I appreciate y'all as always. Appreciate your patience. And sorry I didn't get to every question here, but unfortunately, I got to run to get ready for this afternoon. But you guys know we're always going to be here. We're always going to be chiming in when we're able to. And of course, our streaming channel. I hope you guys are watching that on Wave Weather Now. It's such a great thing to watch. It has all the river stages on it all the time. Our snow maps, everything's on there. So it's a great tool to have along with the alerts as well. And we'll see what the afternoon data is trending toward. And I'll have that update coming up at 3 o'clock. I'll see you then, guys. Take care.